Let's talk about something a little bit different. Lighting can also be soft or hard or diffused. Now, I've added a little table here to help your understanding. So these are just adjectives that are actually used in photography to then describe how light reflects off the subject. The difference between hard and soft, guys, as you can tell from the image, mainly comes from the shadows. So I'm going to talk about shadows quite a bit because shadows are everything. Shadows create meaning in any image that is photographed. Or actually, you know what? Interestingly, shadows also play a massive role in cartoons too. So let's always remember the importance of shadows. But going back to the difference between hard lighting and soft lighting has to do with the boundaries of the shadows. So if you look at the hard lighting, do you see how the boundary that's created by the shadow is clear and it's sharp, right? So you get these sharp, crisp shapes that are created by the shadow. If you're looking at a portrait, so like a photo of a human, you'll notice this a lot where dramatic lighting is used. Actually, we do have an example, don't we? Dramatic lighting is used. In this case, it would be hard lighting, where, guys, do you see how sharp this boundary is? Like, look here, this boundary, look here, this boundary. These boundaries created by the shadows are not soft. The boundary themselves are quite visible to the eye. This would be an indication that it is hard lighting. Then, how do you actually, on a practical level, how do you actually create hard or soft lighting? This is going to help you understand how light works. In order to create soft lighting, I think you guys have all been to a studio before, and you would have seen either umbrella-like, what do you call those? Umbrella-like stands, and it looks like an umbrella, and it's kind of silver or it's white in the inner side of that umbrella. And that's going to be the bulb, and the bulb is going to reflect the light across the umbrella that then emanates the reflected light. So light doesn't come directly, it doesn't shoot directly at the subject, it's reflected and then it bounces off to the subject. So that kind of indirect light is then going to make sure that light is spread. In other words, we're going to get to this in a bit, but in other words, diffused light is going to be spread. Now, because light spreads, the shadow that's created by this diffused light is also slightly blurred, as opposed to hard lights where you don't have this reflecting surface. I think another one of those tools look a little bit like this. I'm sure you guys have seen these kind of things in even on TV, documentaries, or if you go to a studio yourself, you would see these kind of surfaces, and they're usually big. They're usually bigger than me. They're usually bigger than an adult human being. And these create, again, the reflected light. Light always bounces off. It doesn't shoot directly at the subject. Now, because of this type of reflected light, light becomes kind of soft. As opposed to that, for hard lighting, there's no reflecting surface. So if there is a source of light, which could be a light bulb, that light bulb is usually covered like this, thereby creating this clear direction of light. And much like a gun, the beam of light or that ray of light hits the subject directly. Now, because it's so direct, it's going to end up creating harsh, clear, sharp shadows like this, like the one that you're seeing. Let's take a look at these images up here. Like, do you guys see how artificial these things are? Right? Do you see what I mean? It's artificial in that the gaze is also directed. What do we call this gaze? We call it a direct gaze, right? A direct gaze always implies that there is direction from a photographer, from some kind of a director there, that someone is telling the model, like, Megan, look at me. Whereas, let's take a look at this lady here. As opposed to the direct gaze, this is called a 3/4 gaze, guys. So I'm just going to write it like this, but it's called a 3/4 gaze. Why do you think it's called a 3/4 gaze, guys? Because it's looking at 3/4 away from the camera. Do you guys see me right now? Let me just get myself back onto so that you can see where my eyes are. So guys, that would be the direct gaze, because I'm looking straight at the camera, but the 3/4 gaze would be like that. So I'm looking at that. Now, if you were to see me literally talking like this, you'd imagine to yourselves, who is she talking to? Who's outside of this frame that I have access to? Like, clearly there's something going on outside the frame, and she seems to be engaging with something outside of what is available, what is visually available to me. Now, that is always more authentic, because if I'm caught in a moment like this, it looks like I'm not aware of the camera's presence. Does that make sense? So it looks like I'm too busy, I'm engaging, and I'm completely engrossed in something to the point that I'm not aware of being seen, which is why my actions look spontaneous, my actions look natural, and my actions look all the more authentic, which is the kind of images that you're looking at here. I mean, look at this lady. She really doesn't care whether she's being photographed or not. But then that kind of authenticity, that these are activities, or these are the type of women that you would find in your everyday life. These are not models. They're not supermodels. This is not Megan Fox. This isn't Hollywood. This is just the normal, commonplace people like you and I. That kind of relatability is created through the natural lighting. You could link that to the lighting. Whereas these images here, I don't think these images are created for the purpose of relatability. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think we look at the image of Megan Fox and think, oh yeah, like girls like her. I'm just like her. I see girls like that all the time. Or I don't think any guy here is thinking, well, actually, I don't know who this person is, but I don't think we see that face and think, yeah, I mean, that's the everyday guy. Like, any guy looks like that. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to elevate their beauty. Does that make sense? To elevate the aesthetic quality of their faces and present this more as an ideal, almost like an unattainable ideal, which then connects with the idea of promoting the product as the key. If you buy the Avon perfume, perhaps you could feel like Megan Fox, or perhaps you can smell like Megan Fox. Same with the Chanel ad. If you spritz yourself with this Chanel perfume, perhaps you could bring the kind of mood and atmosphere that this man brings. Like, do you see how the effect of the lighting, whether it's studio lighting, whether it's coordinated, or whether it's natural, whether it's authentic, do you see the different effects and how they tie with the message of the text? Yes? Can we take a look at this image real quick? So this was an IB past paper. I've cut a little bit of it for convenience, but do you guys see how linear perspective is evident in this image? You want to look for the lines, guys. You want to look for these receding lines. Yes, there are many, many receding lines, right? That all converge into one point, which is the vanishing point. Now, in fact, this is one of those rare cases where the vanishing point actually does get interesting, because right in that vanishing point is a train that is disappearing. Now, let's go back to distance, okay? Now, because these receding lines are used and linear perspective is applied to the image, what the image does is it accentuates the distance between this man and the horizon. What I'm trying to say is this distance right here may be, I don't know, just 50 meters, but the way we feel it, the way we perceive it in this image is far greater than 50 meters. Does that make sense, guys? Then let's tie it with the purpose of the advertisement. Why would the creator of this advertisement want to accentuate that distance between the man and the horizon, or where the train is moving away? It's to highlight the idea that this man is so late and this situation is irreversible. There's no way to reverse this. It's gone. It's moving further, further, further away, and you're just late. You're just screwed because you had a bad watch. Therefore, go get a nice watch, right? And that nice watch is probably the product that's going to be advertised in the overall text. Now, if you've taken class with me, you know how much I value figurative language, because it's one of those devices that you could identify relatively quickly, and it's usually good for analysis. And when I say good for analysis, what I mean is it's good to add flesh to, like the meaning stretches far. How do we know it's figurative language? We know it's figurative language when the word itself does not operate at the denotation level. When I say denotation, I mean dictionary meaning, right? But it operates on a connotative level. So it has more to do with connotation, symbolic meanings, indirect meanings. So let's go back to glue. So the interests of this network is the glue that holds them together. So is this financially good for you? Oh, well, it's also financially good for me. That's our glue. Like, so for the people in power, the elites of the UK society, they are bound together by interest. Does this make you earn more money? Well, it makes me earn more money too. That's the glue that connects us too, okay? But what we're gonna do is we're going to identify all the different devices that we find in the paragraph, but what's going to be different from what we usually do is we're going to start filtering. Does that make sense? Like, we're going to start actually prioritizing what device really matters, what device is really going to reward us with a nice, fat, fleshy analysis, and what kind of devices, it doesn't mean much, doesn't do much. I mean, it's there, but what am I going to do with it? Chuck it. We're going to start differentiating those two types of devices, okay? So in order to then filter devices, prioritize them, rank them in terms of importance, we first need to consider what is the key purpose of the text. Because if a device contributes to that purpose, it is the important device. But the more you think about it, this device doesn't really do much to the purpose. That's a device we want to chuck. That's a device that we're just easily throw away, not think about it again. We don't need to even add it into our writing. So then, let's see, it says the faces of the public blur, but literally, guys, literally is the author saying, oh no, their faces are blurring. Do you think that's what the author is talking about? Is it really face that's important, or is face part of one's identity, right? Part of one's humanity. Does that make sense, guys? Isn't this the broader idea that Nezra Malik actually wants to talk about? Because your face is the most individualizing feature on your body, right? And face connotes your identity, who you are as a person. So when Nezra Malik says the faces of the public blur into irrelevance, what Nezra Malik really wants to say is the identity and the very humanity, the individuality of the public is forgotten, blurs into irrelevance. Let's also talk about imagery, guys. Imagery. The interesting imagery I found here was this part right here. So I'm just going to mark it in blue. The faces of the, oh, sorry, no, oh, not there. Here. The outside world recedes into a hostile plane, and then things blur. Do you see the imagery of movement? And we could call this dynamic imagery, right?
뭐 사실 뭐 피어 스트럭처 많이 자주 얘기하다 보니까 이게 뭐 어떤 의미가 있는지 그리고 우리가 이걸 어떻게 사용해야 되는지 조금 의미가 다일루트될 때도 있는 것 같아요. 근데 이게 뭔지에 대해서 한번 얘기해 봅시다. 자, 포인트라는 것은 이 문단이 어떤 말을 얘기하고자 한다라는 메인 포인트겠죠. 그죠? 근데 포인트라는 건 뭐냐? 자, 우리의 궁극적인 목표는 이 thesis 이 에세이를 통해서 답변하는 거라고 했어요. 그죠? 이 thesis 결국에는 이 시에서 어떻게 작동하고 있는가를 얘기하면은 우리가 얘기하고자 하는 궁극적인 목표에 답이 되는 거죠. 그러면 IB 페이퍼 1의 테스트를 완료하는 게 되는 거란 말이죠. 자, 그러면은 이 문단에서 어떻게 해야 되냐? 이 thesis 일부를 건드려줘야 결국적으로 에세이가 다 합쳐졌을 때 이 thesis 어떤 의미였다는 것을 설명할 수가 있는 거예요. 자, 그래서 포인트라는 것은 이 thesis 일부다. 그죠? 자, thesis 일부다. 그럼 일부라는 게 무슨 뜻이냐? 우리가 지금 여기서 디바이스 세 개를 사용하여서 어떤 궁극적인 의미를 전달한다고 했는데, 그죠? 그렇다는 것은 the author uses device one to convey 땡땡땡. 이렇게 얘기하면 된다는 거죠. 결국에는 우리가 얘기하고자 하는 세 가지 프레임워크의 디바이스들 중에 하나가 여기에서 사용된다고 프루프를 하기만 하면은 된다는 거죠. 그럼 예를 들어 여기 디바이스라는 것은 뭐 tone, structure, imagery 등등 있겠죠. 저희가 아까 위에 있는 시를 통해서 디바이스에 대해서 좀 더 얘기를 해볼 거예요. 자, 그럼 이런 포인트를 얘기했어요. 작가가 이걸 사용한다. 그럼 어떻게 해요? 증명을 해야 될 거예요. 그죠? 증명을 하기 위해서 처음 나온 거는 example입니다. The instance which the author used that very same device in the top and the point. 자, 그래서 당연히 우리가 뭐 어떤 뭐 토론을 하든 뭐 MUN이나 뭐 이런 뭐 활동들 많이 하시는지 모르겠는데 어떤 본인의 포인트를 프루프하고 싶으면 그래요. 내가 이걸 얘기했으니까 이거에 대한 예시를 들어야겠죠, 당연히. 그래서 이 시 안에서 혹은 언싱 텍스트 안에서 이 디바이스가 언제 인플로이 되었는지에 대해서 한번 예시를 들어보면 됩니다. 자, 근데 그 예시 드는 것까지는 좋았어요. 그것까지는 별로 학생들이 어려워하지 않는단 말이죠, 페이퍼 1에서. 자, 우리가 포인트가 뭔지도 알았고 예시가 뭔지도 알았어요. 근데 그 예시 외에 explanation 링크가 좀 어렵단 말이에요. 그죠? 자, explanation이 뭐냐면, 자, 말 그대로 한국어로 하면 설명이죠. 설명. 근데 뭘 설명하라는 거지? 라고 헷갈릴 수가 있어요. 자, 여기서 뭐냐면, 작가가 이 디바이스를 사용해서 어떤 메시지를 전달한다는 것은 결국에는 무엇을 의미하냐? 메시지를 전달하려면 작가가 뭘 해야 되느냐? 독자에게 변화를 줘야 해. 독자에게 변화를 줘야 돼요. 우리가 생각하는 방식을 바꾸게 한다거나, 우리가 생각하는 어떤 의미를 바꾸게 한다거나, 아니면 우리가 어떤 행동을 하고 싶게 한다거나, 음, 감정을 느끼게 한다거나, 이런 식으로 변화를 줘서 자극을 줘야, 변화 혹은 자극 자체를 줘야 어떤 메시지가 전달이 되는 거예요. 그냥 단순히 뭐가 맞다, 뭐가 이렇다라고 얘기하는 것만으로 독자는 쉽게 설득되지 않아요. 작가는 독자를 설득하기 위해서 변화를 추구하여 메시지를 전달하는 거거든요. 자, Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul. 자, 첫 번째로 이제 제목처럼 나오는 게 feathers와의 comparison이 있어요. 요거는 metaphor 혹은 뭐, 어, 이미지라고 생각할 수도 있겠죠. 그러니까 희망이 마치 깃털과 같은 것이다. 우리가 아까 민서 학생이 되게 잘 얘기해 주셨는데 깃털이라는 것은 뭐예요? 절대 가라앉지 않아요. 어떻게 바닥에 또 가라앉다 보면 누가 또 갑자기 걸어 다니면 살짝 바람 불어서 또 날아가요. 그게 뭐야? 항상 떠 있는 존재. 항상 떠 있는 존재인 것만큼 우리가 당연히 뭐예요? 어렵고 슬프고 힘든 것들은 무거움과 많이 연결이 되어 있고 항상 밑에 있는데 깃털은 밑에 가려고 해도 항상 떠오르는 존재라는 거예요. 그 말인즉슨 밝음, positivity, 그리고 resilience 이런 것들이 나오는 거죠. 항상 떠오르는 것만큼 희망은 반복적으로 긍정적인 존재라는 것을 우리에게 상기시키고 있어요. 그죠? 자, 그 다음에 that perches in the soul. 자, perches in the soul. 자, 일단 body가 아니고 soul이에요. 영혼. 영혼이라는 것은 뭐예요? 우리가 흔히 생각할 때 우리의 가장 깊은 곳을 얘기해요. 그죠? 옛날 이집트 왜 미라들 보면은 파라오들 죽었을 때도 이제 몸을 이렇게 데코레이트 하는데 그게 왜요? 나중에 영혼이 그걸 다 가지고 가라는 얘기잖아요. 그죠? 우리의 가장 깊은 죽고서도 남는 것이 있는데 그 안에 perch하고 있대요. perch라는 것은 굉장히 강하게 남아있다는 뜻인데 remain이 아니라 perch라는 것은 우리의 가장 깊은 곳에 가장 깊게 남아있는 존재다. 그만큼 희망이라는 것은 중심적인 존재다라고 해석할 수 있다. 우리에게 그렇게 깊은 곳에 중심에 있는 것이 희망이다. 이렇게 생각하면 될 것 같아요.